Okay, we're going to learn Likkutei Sichot, Volume 2, Parshas Eikev. Parashat HaShavua, Parashat Eikev, היא אחת משבע דנחמתה. Our Parsha is one of the 7 of Nechama, like we learned for Dvarim, with that mimer from Reb Hillel, Ita Bepsikta. בהן לא רק תוכן ההפטרות הוא נחמה. So these 7 weeks from Tisha B'Av and on are all about consolation, but it's not the only topic of the Haftarah. There's other topics. כי אם גם תוכן פרשיות הקריאה, because they wanted to connect it also in some way at least to the Parsha, which is the way it is the rest of the year, that the Haftarah is of the inyan of the Parsha. הרי כל הפטרה רובן היא מעין הפרשה, מאחר שההפטרה דנה בנחמת הגאולה, יש להניח שגם הפרשה דנה בגאולה. So the Rebbe is going to do reverse reasoning. That if it was chosen that these 7 weeks are about consolation, so the reverse reasoning says that even though these were done after the time of the year and not because of the connection to the Parsha, but you can also learn that there's a connection to the Parsha, but not that the Parsha is... When he's saying here, because the Haftarah is about consolation, so the Parsha must also be about, in some way, Nechama, about consolation. לאמיתו של דבר עוסקת התורה כולה בגאולה. So, sorry, I missed I said it incorrectly. It's not just consolation stam. It's not just any kind of consolation. It's the consolation of the Geula, of the redemption. And now he says, in truth, the entire Torah is talking about the redemption. שכן אינך בן חורין על מי שעוסק בתורה, because there is no one who is free, but he who is engaged in Torah. על ידי העסק בתורה משתחררת הנשמה מגלות הגוף. By engaging with the Torah, the neshama is freed from the exile in the body and in the animal soul. ומתוך כך משתחרר גם הגוף מן הגלות כפשוטה. And that causes the body itself to be freed from its exile. ברם, still, בכל התורה נידונים עניינים שונים, האדם באה גאולה. ואילו פרשיות שבעה דנחמתה נידון את הגאולה עצמה. But in all the rest of the Torah, except for these 7 weeks, from Tisha B'Av until Rosh Hashanah, the Parsha deals with an aspect of Torah, and that leads to Geula, that leads to a redemption. But in these 7 weeks, the topic is the Geula itself. And that's the chiddush about these 7 weeks over the rest of the year. Because we are still in exile. So to understand what Geula is, what redemption is, we first have to understand what exile is and what its reason is. By knowing the reason, you can know how to fix the problem. And when you fix the problem, then the result is that the geula comes, that the redemption comes. Like a person who is sick, when he knows that he's ill, he knows what the symptoms are. He goes to a doctor, because he knows he's sick, he knows how to explain to the doctor what he's feeling, what his symptoms are. And by diagnosing the symptoms, the doctor knows how to heal him. עצם ידיעתו של החולה, שהוא חולה, וידיעתו במה מתבטאת מחלתו, הידיעה עצמה מהווה מחצית הרפואה. By knowing, by the patient knowing that he is ill, and his knowledge that whatever of his symptoms, and he knows the symptoms, this knowledge itself is already half the remedy. And it itself is going to bring the other half of the remedy until the person completely heals. So here we're talking about physical illness, but now we're talking about spiritual illness. And spiritual illness is our illness in exile. So by knowing that we're in Galus, first of all, that we're in exile, which is not clear to many people. Unfortunately, a lot of people think that everything's nice and dandy. So knowing that you're in Galus, knowing that you're in exile, and understanding the reason for it is the beginning of the Geula, is the beginning of the redemption, the remedy. שכן ידיעת מהות הגלות מביאה לחיפוש דרכים לריפויה ולצאת ממנה אל ארץ טובה ורחבה. That by understanding the essence of what exile means, what it means to be in exile, that causes a person to begin to search for remedies that will bring him out of exile into a wide and good land. Section 2. בטרם נכנסו בני ישראל לארץ טובה ורחבה לראשונה עברו מדבר גדול ואז יצאו מדבר ובאו לארץ ישראל. So there's a rule that whatever happened in the first exile is going to happen in all the exiles, meaning also in our exile. So the Egyptian exile, they came out of Egypt, and theoretically they should have gone straight to Eretz Yisrael. But even if they would have gone straight, they still would have been in the wilderness for some time, because there's a wilderness in between, and it's not a superficial fact. It's not an essential fact. It's very essential that from Egypt to get to Eretz Yisrael, to get to the land of Israel, you have to cross the wilderness. Whether you do it in 3 days, 40 years, it doesn't matter. You still have to cross the wilderness. Maaseh avot siman habanim. And like we said, what happened in the past is a sign for what will happen in the future to the children. סיפור התורה על המדבר בו נמצאו בני ישראל עובר לכניסתם לארץ ישראל. מהווה סימן הבנים שגם הגלות בה אנו שרויים כיום דומה למדבר בו היו שרויים בני ישראל אז. So it says, the exile that we're now in is not the exile state as it was 100 years ago. This is a new state of exile. What's new about it? This is called Midbar Ha'amim. This is said these words yet, but we'll say it in a moment, I think. This is what the prophet, Jeremiah calls, not Jeremiah, Ezekiel calls the wilderness of the nations. It's another state. אם ידיעתנו על המדבר בו נמצאו אז בני ישראל, שהיא כאמור גם ידיעה לגלות בה נמצאים על אותה, נדע כיצד ובמה לרפא את הגלות. So by looking at the state that they were in the wilderness, and understanding this, and it describes it like this, and from it we can learn about our present state in the wilderness. And like we said, that knowing the symptoms is already half the remedy. How do we get out of this wilderness and enter a good and wide land? המושג מדבר, section 3, המושג מדבר מציין מקום שאינו מושב אדם. Wilderness refers to a place that is not inhabited. Human beings don't inhabit it. המדבר הגדול הוא איפה? כשהחלק הבלתי מושב גדול ממקום מושב בני אדם. There's no complete wilderness. There's always areas that there's an oasis, there's this, there's that. There's in every populated area of inhabitable area of the earth, there's always a certain weight between, or ratio between the amount of inhabitable land and the amount that's not. When you say that this is a great desert, a great wilderness, what you're saying is that in terms of ratio, there's a lot more uninhabitable space than there is habitable. So what does this mean? It's called Moshav Bnei Adam. You call it, in Hebrew you say, the humanly inhabitable space. Okay. There's a stress on the word human. Adam Musav Livnei Israel. When you say humanly inhabitable, you're talking about the Jewish people. Because Atem Kurim Adam. Because you are called a human. Kfi she'Ashla masbir, the Ashla explains this. What does it mean that we're called a human? Here, the word human is not whether you're a human being, whether you have 2 arms and 2 legs and a nice smile. That's not the point. The point is that Adam comes from the word Adameh. I will be similar to. So it's because we're similar to Hashem, above. Bnei Yisrael domim la'adam ha'elyon she'al hakiseh, because the Jewish people resemble the supernal man, or the supernal form of a man that is sitting on the throne of glory. Meaning that he has the power to rule nature. That's what it means. And it says that the person that this form that Ezekiel saw on the chair, everyone who saw the chair, the chariot, They saw that he resembled Jacob, whatever that means. I don't know how they said. Did they have pictures of Jacob that he knew that this was Jacob? And how did he know? Okay? How do you know this is Jacob?
רגע.
רוצים שתחזור.
עושים את זה כבר. שפע.
לא הפריע. הוא היה מאוד בשקט. אפשר לקבל 15? 15.
קיבלת מה שאתה רוצה.
אבל בקטנים. בדיוק.
מה שאתה רוצה. 2, 4, 5.
יש כוח.
אל תקטע אישור איזה שפע. שמחה. שיזרמו השמחות, שיזרמו.
אמן.
I don't know if Jacob.
I don't know who's Jacob. Your name is Jacob. So how do you know? How do you know somebody is called Jacob?
He's a prophet, he knows.
That's a big question. How do you know it's Jacob? How do you know it's not Mark?
Ask him, who's this guy?
It's a big question.
Oh, it's not back?
Yeah.
When you come back?
Tisha B'Av. Motzei Tisha B'Av. Fasted for 36 hours. He started Tisha B'Av in Australia and he finished Tisha B'Av in Eretz Yisrael. So he had 12 extra hours fast. So how do you know? In any case, so the form on top of the chariot is the form of Jacob. Hamidbar Gadol, I guess that's why the Rebbe doesn't mention it here, that it's Jacob, because it's very hard to explain to someone. How do you say that? How do you know that it's Jacob? המדבר גדול, החלק הבלתי מיושב באדם, גדול מן החלק המיושב באדם, כפי שנאמר, כי אתם המעט מכל העמים. So now, when we look at the great wilderness, where do you want to look at it? So he says, I want to look at it in terms of we ourselves. I'm the wilderness. Now I ask, what am I more? Am I more habitable or more uninhabitable? Meaning, is there more of human in me than there is of animal in me? In other words, okay? Am I a wild beast or am I a human being? Which one is it? So he says that when you say that it's a big wilderness, it's like saying Ki atem ha'me'at mikol ha'amim, that in the end, in comparison to the rest of the nations of the world, the Jewish people are a minority. So in myself, I would say that my divine soul is less. In the whole world, I would say the Jewish people are the least. That there's less of this being like God than there is of being like, not like God, like being a wilderness, uninhabitable. The same thing goes within the Jewish people. That the people who resemble God, who try to resemble God, it doesn't mean that they succeed, but at least they try. How do they try? To resemble God, you have to do God's will. To do God's will, you have to follow what the Torah says. So the number of people, the percentage, the ratio of people that follow Torah and mitzvos is smaller than those who don't, for now. המילה הראשונה בה מציין הכתוב את הקלות היא המדבר הגדול. הגורם הראשון, השלב הראשון שהירידה בו, מתחילה הגלות, היא העובדה שמחשיבים את העולם שמסביב לגדול. So now he says, the big problem with the first reason for exile, the first symptom, which is also the reason, is not the reason, it's not the same thing, but he's saying the reason here is that you look around you and you say that the uninhabitable is much greater, the wilderness is much greater than the habitable. That very state that you look at size and you assume that size is indicative of the situation, that the ratio is what indicates the situation, that's the first problem, that's the first reason for the exile. I do think that it's cause and effect, that it's both of them, that it's both the cause and the symptom. Because here in this case, the symptom is exactly what you see. You see that people look around them and say, but this is how the world functions. I want to be the same way. I had this thought this morning. You're not supposed to think, I know. But once in a while, it happens to me. And I was thinking about the whole shita of the Litvish world to marry off the girls, the daughters of wealthy people to very learned chasanim, like young men. It's a very interesting thing. Why would you stipulate? It's also backwards. You would have thought maybe there should be the opposite, that the prospective groom should bring the money to buy the daughter, if you're already thinking in these terms. What?
That also happens.
It's not so common. But in any case, what you don't have is very interesting. Maybe it doesn't. That happens also, but it's very uncommon, I think. That the daughter of a Talmid Chacham marries the son of a big Talmid Chacham, and that they're both very holy, let's say. But they're both very. The parents are very learned, both of them. That doesn't happen so much. Why did they build it this way? So I think money attracts money. In the regular world, money attracts money, and brains attract brains. So what do you get? So you slowly get that the people who are smarter become smarter and smarter because you're weaning out. You're like playing genetics. Mm-hmm. But money is not genetics. Money is not how smart you are. It's not about brains. We know that. There's no connection. So there you have randomness, it's very uncommon to find a family that will have, for many generations, wealthy people. What you have is, at best, there's like generational wealth, which is like 2-3 generations. Except for the really, really, really wealthy families that can keep it going for 10 generations, 15 generations. But there's very few of them. There's probably like 10 in the whole world. Everything else is like for 2-3 generations. They don't last. They can't keep it up. Why? Because money has nothing to do with genetics. It's pure mazel. It's pure luck. I mean, people work hard. It's not that they don't work hard. They do. But to become very wealthy, that's not from hard work. But becoming learned is genetic. I mean, you become smarter and smarter as you wean them out, and you. So they did something amazing. They came and said, "Look, if we marry learned children to children of learned parents to learned parents, what we'll get is that the Torah will stay in certain lineages." And actually, what they did was they broke that, which is ingenious. Because what are you coming and saying? You're coming and saying that I want the Torah to spread around. I want the brains to spread around. I don't want just one family or 2 families or 10 families, whatever it is, to have the lineage of Torah in them. I want everybody. We want it to be an equal opportunity for everyone. And how do you do that? You take something that's random, like money, and you come and say, okay, the daughter or the son of the greatest scholars, they should marry the most wealthy. It's like it's easier for the parents also. It's very nice for them. But it also, in a certain way, ensures that you won't get a lineage. Very uncommon. You won't really get a lineage. It's a very interesting idea. Mm-hmm. So I used to think that it's a negative thing, but now I think that it's a very good thing. Why am I saying this? Because when the rest of the world looks at this, it says like, what is this? This is like some kind of crazy mishagas that. And everybody's like, why are you doing it this way? Nobody. It's like everybody's belittling the Litvish world with this type of thinking. Well, what kind of thinking is this? But when you think about it, it was set up at some time ago, and the reason it still works is because they don't pay attention to what the rest of the world says. So you have to continue to do your thing, because there's a lot of good reasons for why we do it the way we do it. Okay? So anyway, so that's the first symptom and the first cause. That you're looking at the world and you're saying, the rest of the world knows how to act. I don't know how to act. Because what's the proof? The majority of the world doesn't do what I do. So you come from that to some kind of thinking that you're the one who's off. Says the Rebbe, that's the first reason for Golus. רואים את היישוב יהודים ויהדות כשטח מועט. You see Judaism and Jews as the habitable area, but it's very, very small. ואת העולם שמסביב, את מדבר העמים לשטח גדול, לגוף יותר גדול מן היהודים. And you see that the rest of the world is wilderness. What do you mean wilderness? It's uninhabitable. In other words, it's not Jewish, and it doesn't act by Jewish rules. So what do you get from that? You get the idea that you're wrong. You have nothing to offer. I was in Sichot the other day. I had to buy something. And Sichot has KSP, that computer store. So I went to buy something, because there's a big one there. Why is it so big there? Because it services all the high-tech companies in Yerushalayim. So they have everything, basically. So I went there to get something that's very hard to get. And so there's a big line there. You have to wait for at least 20 minutes until you're served. And I know Sichot. I used to work there even at some point, and I consulted there. But it's grown immensely. Now there's Mobileye there. There's just like a whole complex. It's a whole campus. And there's a ton of new companies that have really grown. And I think there's probably 50 buildings now there. It's like more than Silicon Valley, I think. I don't know how much is in Palo Alto, but it's huge. And you think about it, how much money are they exporting every day? It's tremendous. They have so many products that they're developing there. It's millions and millions of dollars every hour, without any exaggeration. It's very, very successful. I'm saying there's one building here that's missing. We should be exporting Torah. Why are we not exporting Torah? This should be the number one export of Eretz Yisrael. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah. Yetzu, what needs to come out?
There's loads of
Torah. What?
There are loads of shluchim
Okay.
who have come from Eretz Yisrael.
Okay.
And they set up Batei Chabad in America and other places.
But they're not exporting. It's not the same thing. You have to sit here, you create the product, and you have an office there that sells it. But there's nobody creating something here, there's somebody selling over there. It's not exporting, it's not coming back in any way or form. I don't mean that it should make money. Either it does or doesn't, I don't care. But it should be the biggest building there. And somebody should fund this and decide that this should be the number one export. If you're talking about bits of data, how many bits of data are all these companies exporting out? And how much Torah, how many bits of Torah are we exporting out? Okay? So it should be without competition. In any case, the other reason I thought about it was, I told you about this already, that the Pew Research Center finally released the real numbers. They weren't willing to release them for a long time. That now there is officially more Chabad congregations, more people in Chabad congregations in the United States there are in the entire Reform and conservative shuls together. What does that mean?
We won.
No, it means the Rebbe won, first of all. But it's not a win. It's just you got the infrastructure in place. That's very nice. But what are you doing to change the course of those people who are attending? Because we know that Chabad is very open-minded. So anybody can come. It's not like regular frum communities that if you don't fit the shtanz, you don't fit the mold, they won't let you in. Chabad's opening, it's open, you're welcome anyway. So the flip side of that is that if you have that many people, say one more thing that happened. The Hebrew Union College is closed. The big thing in Cincinnati, that was where they trained their rabbis for the Reform movement, it's closed now, from what I understand. It's either closed or being closed. It's not functioning. So the flip side of that is, so how many yeshivas have been built in the United States and Eretz Yisrael to cater to these hundreds of thousands of Jews who are now in Chabad? How many?
A lot.
Yeah, how many? Name one. Zero. Absolutely one big zero.
All about Jewish yeshivas.
No, there's no Baal Tshuva yeshivas.
Of course there is.
Chabad Baal Tshuva yeshivas, name one. What there was in 1950 is what there is now. The only thing that was added was Mayanot, and they struggled to bring anyone. It's a complete failure in that area. So what does that mean?
It means we have to close.
It means we have to stop now. It means that if you're not creating yeshivas for Bali Tshuva, not even for Bali Tshuva, these are kids of parents who already became from to some extent. But they became from the Ruch Chabad. Why do you think they need to go to Or Sameach? Or Sameach is not overflowing either. There's nothing
They go
happening
to
there.
regular yeshivas.
They don't.
Okay, let me know what you're doing tomorrow.
That's not him.